Welcome to the official Colts podcast. Jeffrey Gorman here. JJ Stankevitz from Colts.com, the senior writer, Miss Larra Overton. Let me tell you what's going on today before we get in a big hullabaloo about what's going on here with our Colts. We've got a busy one, so stay tuned. We've got the toolbox around here somewhere. We'll get it out. But these two craftsmen right here, craftswomen, we're going to bring out some areas of difficulty that we've seen up to this point. But the toolbox is out and going to show you how the Colts can kind of calm these waters a little bit. Everybody, just relax. They're at 2-3 right now. We heard Shane Steichen say that a couple of weeks ago. So 1 week at a time league. Hey, also, we're going to talk about some individual players that are highlighting, having a hell of a year. We're going to handpick a few of those and point out who is playing well. And then we've got an interview. Here we go. Larra Overton, you met for the third week in a row, which happens probably pretty rarely when it comes to network TV covering of NFL games. But Aditi Kinkhabwala has had the 3 last Colts games. That was the win against Pittsburgh, the loss at Jacksonville, and now we'll be down at Tennessee. So she knows this football team pretty good.
And she was the one who got that great post-game interview with Joe Flacco in which she asked Joe about Anthony thinking he's cool, and Joe said, I just found out I'm 8 days older than Anthony's mom, so in no world does he think I'm cool. So she has gotten some gems these last few weeks, and great to have her this weekend, and hopefully we can bookend this stretch with another victory down there in Nashville.
It's starting. JJ, let's go to you. The vibe after this game, we saw what happened. We saw Joe Flacco lead this offense back. There was some high points, there were some low points, there was a ton of yards given up by this defense, but we all thought Joe is going to finish this thing and do it the right way. It didn't happen. But my point is this. All is not lost. There are still some beautiful cloud, sunny skies out there for this Colts team because it's only 2-3. Let's not forget what the Texans did last year. Heck, they ended up winning the stinking division after a rough start. So
yeah, I don't want to paper over some of the issues that this team has, but generally speaking, through 5 weeks, there are some things to be encouraged about that are more kind of big picture than like, the offense is doing some decent stuff. The Colts have the best turnover differential in the AFC South. They're +1. The Texans and Jaguars are next at -3. Okay. So the Colts have a turnover differential +4 better than the next team in the division. They also have the highest net points total in the division. It's still -3. But they're at -3. The Texans are -12. The Titans are -11. The Jaguars are -46. And I don't know, I kind of like looking at that sometimes of just like, are you playing a lot of close games? Have you been boat raced? Yet the Texans got boat raced by the Minnesota Vikings a couple weeks ago. Otherwise, the Colts have played in a lot of close games. And while the defense has some issues that we're going to get into here, the Colts are just a couple plays away here. Legitimately, this isn't like a team kind of coping and being like, we're a couple plays away. It's like, no, you are a couple plays away from flipping this thing and being in a good position to make the playoffs. So there's some good things going on here. There are some issues that need to be fixed with this football team. But it's early enough in the season that if you can fix them, there's enough here that this team can still make a run.
Absolutely. And Larra, we've seen the urgent care waiting room. It's called the Colts on both sides of the ball. We will be getting some players back from health. That's totally going to help out. It didn't in Jacksonville. There was a lot of people that were watching the game on the sidelines. But again, a lot of starters will be coming back over this week and next week as well.
Unfortunately, one of them, of course, not going to be Will Fries, suffered that devastating injury last Sunday. That was a horrific scene to see him carted off and all of that, and heard the guys, just tell him, love you, Spud, as they were taking him to the Colts locker room, and had an opportunity to talk with Zaire Franklin and Quentin Nelson in the locker room about just how much Will has meant to this team. JJ, I know you and I each kind of traded some messages just with Will, and he is in very good spirits, just saying, hey, small bump in the road. I know I'm going to be back. I'm going to be better. Like he has just an incredible outlook through all of this. But yeah, you do start to look at with 2 weeks that you did not have Kenny, Quiddy, Ryan Kelly. This would be an ideal opportunity to get a couple of those guys back. And then also you get this sense, just kind of looking at where they were at the end of last week, I think that there's a better chance of getting Anthony Richardson than Jonathan Taylor for this week against the Tennessee Titans. Unless something happens. I mean, we still have a lot of days to get through. Haven't even practiced yet this week. We'll see what transpires on Wednesday. But that's I would say that's where I lean. That's where my intuition takes me as I look at where you are going into week 6.
Yeah, I think you're probably right on that, just in the general vibe you're getting from listening to, like when Shane Steichen's on Roundtable Live yesterday, saying, he's encouraged about the progress of those guys with Richardson, Taylor, Ryan Kelly, and Kenny Moore II. You start getting guys back after being so depleted for the last couple of weeks. That always is going to help. DeForest Buckner will be eligible to come off IR in week 7. So, we don't know if this is going to be the last game that Buck misses. Hopefully, he's back sooner rather than later. The Colts are not putting a timetable on it, but that's something to keep an eye on. If you can get Buck back this month, maybe for Miami, maybe for Houston.
He's been hitting it in the weight room, too. This is a guy who's going to come back with a ferocity.
You see some of those videos he's posting on his Instagram?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I take notice.
Yeah. Yeah. He's not going to come back out of shape. Let's say that.
I can't think of a point probably in the last decade plus that DeForest has probably been out of shape.
That's a really good point.
No kidding. Good point. Hey, real quick, let's stay with the offensive line. Will Fries, you talked about, he'll be missed. That thing is not going to be eligible to come back, it looks like, for the rest of this season. We saw Dalton Tucker go in there. He's been brought up on this show a couple, more than just a few times. But with the health of Ryan Kelly, guys, my question is, if Kelly can go this week, is there an option Bortolini slides inside, or is it a Dalton Tucker show?
Bortolini played some guard during the preseason, and he had some good reps in there. He's got that flexibility to play guard and center. So I think the good news is that both Tucker and Bortolini have played well when they've come in. Bortolini has been great. You cannot ask for a better showing for a guy's first 2 games of his NFL career, stepping in at center against especially that Steelers defense that's really, really good, really tuned up. He's really shown himself to be, a really reliable player in there. And then Dalton Tucker came in, and I looked it up. He only gave up 1 pressure and 20 pass rushing snaps that he faced against Jacksonville. So, good showing from him, a guy who earned his way on this team during the preseason as an undrafted free agent. So you got some options there, which is never a bad thing to have.
Right, and we're going to find out what the injury report is midweek. Let's break out the toolbox right now, guys, because we saw a bunch of these issues, if you will, down in Jacksonville. It's been like that since the start of the season defensively. But how about this? Pick your tool of choice, go to the toolbox, and tell me how we're going to fix allowing these explosive plays on defense. How do we minimalize?
So here's where I'm kind of at with the explosive plays, is the Colts are not allowing a ton of them. Like baseline, they are in explosive play rate against the pass. They're 13th in the NFL.
The ones you're allowing are just fatal.
That's what I was going to get to, is you're allowing, an explosive play is any pass that's 15 or more yards. The Colts have allowed those at the 13th lowest rate in the NFL this year. So that's fine. That's about league average. The problem is the Colts have allowed 5 passes of 40 or more yards. 4 passes of 40 or more yards and 3 passes of 60 or more yards.
Yeah.
So, like Larra said, when you're allowing them, they are critical blows. It's like you might be getting, in a little fight, you might not be getting jabbed all that much, but you get hit with 3 haymakers and you can't come back from that.
That's running and receiving. I mean, when we're talking about that.
You the Bigsby run.
Oh, that was huge.
Against Jacksonville.
What was that, 60 plus?
65.
Yeah.
But the Colts in explosive run percentage allowed are 20th in the NFL. A lot of that goes back to the first 2 weeks of the season. But yeah, I mean, you can't allow 60-yard gains. Like, that's just something you can't do. Here's this I just thought was kind of funny. The Colts are dead last in the NFL in allowing plays of 40 or more yards. They lead the NFL in plays of 40 or more yards.
How about that? Offense and
just
defense.
Two complete opposites. Yeah.
Absolutely.
The other thing about the explosive plays is that the trend has become that facing the Colts defense is a bit of a get-back game for some of these offenses. The quarterbacks that you've faced, they've had their best outings of the season against the Indianapolis Colts. This Jacksonville Jaguars offense was by no means potent until they faced the Colts. Justin Fields, best game of his season so far. Caleb Williams, best game of his season. We don't even talk.
Carolina. But Carolina's defense is also
okay. But you look at
Malik
that.
Willis.
That was where I was going next.
Yeah.
I was going to say, especially when you look to the second half of that Steelers game. I think that half in particular in there, I think was probably one of the better performances that you have seen from Fields. But yes, Malik Willis, of course, which backup, that's going to happen. You've had nothing to compare that to, of course. But I think that is what scares me a little bit, is that you have these quarterbacks that you are facing who are like, oh, this is I don't care if I've struggled before. This is how they've carved them up. This is potentially what we can do going up against them. And it's interesting this week because, again, talk about injuries. We'll have to wait and see what Tennessee is going to do. We have Will Levis with the AC joint sprain, reported to be an AC joint sprain in his throwing shoulder, so it could be Mason Rudolph. So how you're preparing versus either of those guys. Obviously, you swept Tennessee last year. This is a very different looking Titans team than what you got in 2020.
Well, and it's Levis or Rudolph this week, and then next week it's Snoop Huntley for the Dolphins.
Right.
So you're absolutely right, Larry. You've got these quarterbacks. You say, that should be a good matchup for the Colts. And, Trevor Lawrence goes from completing 50-something% of his passes in the first 4 games to 82%.
He has career games against the Colts.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. That this is a problem that the Colts have to solve. And Zaire Franklin, I think, hit a really good note when I asked him after the game, how do you balance, you give up 37 points, but you got a lot of backups in, and he's like, there's no excuse for it. If you are on the field, if you're in this locker room, you're here for a reason. And the thing is, the league doesn't care. And that's what he said. He's like, Jacksonville didn't care. The Titans aren't going to care. When you get to the end of the season, if you miss the playoffs and your defense is decimated by injuries, the point is you missed the playoffs. It starts the sentence starts with you missed the playoffs, not the defense was decimated by injuries.
You don't get an asterisk at the end of your record.
Every team deals with injuries. The Colts are dealing with a lot on the defensive line right now. 3 defensive ends and DeForest Buckner out. That's insane. Dio Dangbo, I thought, had a really good point yesterday, that with Tyquan Lewis going on IR, you lose a guy who can play every single position.
Yeah,
He's like, it's almost like you're losing 4 guys when you lose Tyquan. But that's the reality of the league.
Can we fix the quarterback pressure? And I know, like I said, it's an urgent care waiting room. I get it. But can quarterback pressure be fixed this season by Gus Bradley in this defensive front?
Yes, and I want to go to a comment yesterday from Shane, if I can dig it up really quickly. So I'm going through the transcript, and I think that this is as strong as we have heard him comment, if I can find it.
Is it the one about the 4-man, 5-man,
Correct.
6-man pressure?
Correct. Yeah. There it is. We allowed too many of those, and we've got to get those things cleaned up. Also affecting the quarterback, whether that's with the 4-man rush, a 5-man rush, or a 6-man rush. We've got to affect the quarterback early in games and go from there. Here's what it is. Just do something early. Affect these quarterbacks early on, make them play back in their heels just a little bit, disrupt that offensive rhythm early on. That's where, if you do that successfully within the first quarter, I think everything else is going to level out to some degree. You don't have to, in my mind, overhaul things completely. You just have to put a heavier emphasis on that aspect early on in games, especially against quarterbacks who are not coming in wholly confident. This is not a situation. Obviously when you face CJ Stroud, that's one thing, right? That's a different type of situation, but you aren't, right? The quarterbacks that you're facing, you have to take advantage of the fact they are should be relatively compromised.
Well, look at what happened with Justin Fields, where the Colts got pressure on him early in that game. They built a lead, and he had a great second half, but it was always just to come back. It wasn't to control the game like Trevor Lawrence controlled this game in Week 5. I think the early pressure is such a good point, because especially with this defense, the way it's designed, if you get that D-line rolling early in a game, then the quarterback's thinking about it. That you're thinking about the pressure. You're thinking about where's Laiatu Latu, Whereas if you get settled into a game, and for Trevor Lawrence, his jersey didn't get dirty the entire game, you don't have to think about that. You can just play free. You can rip a 61-yard pass to Christian Kirk on 2nd and 24 because you're not worried about the rush because it hasn't got to you to that point of the game.
And conversely, when this offense has struggled, when has it been? When you've gotten to the quarterback early, you've pressured and disrupted this offense early in games and, not allowed them to establish obviously it's what they've done early on when you've seen this this offense find success. They've hit the explosive plays often. They've hit the explosives early. They've been able to establish, big leads early in games or, get off to a fast start.
So I looked at some of the pressure rate numbers. The Colts are 29th in pressure rate right now.
No good.
No team. They're at 26.6% of opposing dropbacks they've generated a pressure. No team has made the playoffs with a pressure rate under 30% since 2020. So that number's got to get up. If you want to have a shot at making the playoffs, that number probably is going to have to get over 30%, bare minimum. And then the thing that maybe is the most concerning is the Colts are not generating quick pressure. So opposing quarterbacks, you're able to quick drops, get the ball out, because you're not really worried. And, those plays are tough to generate pressure on. But the Colts this year, they've only had 18 plays where they've generated pressure in under 2.5 seconds. That's 30th in the NFL. In terms of quick pressure rate, which is a stat Pro Football Focus tracks, they've generated a quick pressure on 12.1% of dropbacks. That's 31st in the NFL. Only the Carolina Panthers are worse.
Okay.
So that's a tough thing right there if you're not getting that.
I got to ask you both opinion questions right here. Can we fix this with the blitz? Is it something that, I'm not making us out to be defensive coordinators, but pressure, it's minimal. It's just salt and pepper shaken on the entree, in my opinion, because it's just a little bit here and there from Gus Bradley. Is more pressure rate going to come from a blitz that they say, hey, Colts are doing things a little bit different? They blitzed 5% over this course of 4 games. Oh, they blitzed 15% over the course of this 4 games.
I think what will help that is getting Kenny Moore back, so you are strengthened in the secondary a little bit. You are able to, you're able to be a little bit stronger on the back end, because that's part of, the trade-off with the blitz, right? And so I think that is something you can do with much more frequency and much more confidence when you have that guy back in your rotation.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, and your point about the secondary is absolutely right. It's easy to sit here and say right. Gus Bradley should blitz more, he should blitz more, but you got to be able to trust the guys on the back end. And getting Kenny back, I think, is a big part of that, where you can trust Jalen Jones and you can trust probably Julian Blackmon back there, but you got a lot of young guys who are coming in and out of the lineup, who maybe haven't had that, who haven't earned it yet, who still can earn it, absolutely, but just in terms of that trust, you can't send the house if you don't have anyone to protect it on the back end.
And when did we see the Colts blitz the most last season? It was against the Baltimore Ravens, but you had Juju Brents, you had Kenny Moore in those type of situations. So that a lot of people are like, oh, go back to that, go back to that playbook, go back to that game plan that was so successful in defeating Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens early last season. Well, what you have to think about is the personnel is a little bit different just based on the injury issues that you've incurred.
Now, I will say when the Colts have blitzed, they've had some success. The Colts are 9th in pressure rate when blitzing this year. So they've generated a pressure on 48.6% of their blitzes. They have the 6th highest sack rate on blitzes. They're turning a blitz into a sack at 14.3%, but it's not... You can't extrapolate these out to, well, they should double the number of blitzes they're sending per game, and these numbers will stay.
But aren't those stats on Shane Steichen's desk and Gus Bradley's desk that I'm not back there? We're not back there.
So I wanted to bring them up.
Yeah,
I wanted to bring them up because there's a little bit of context that you have to get with them. Blitzes are situational. You can send a blitz with this down and distance, but you can't send it with this down and distance. They're based on personnel. Do you have Kenny Moore II on the field where you feel comfortable sending a blitz? Kenny, by the way, good blitzer.
Great blitzer.
You take him off the field, and that's a bit more of a challenge to disguise where your blitz is coming from. So it's based on down and distance. It's based on personnel. This isn't me saying, oh, if you just turn that dial up from being 28th in blitz rate to 18th in blitz rate, all these numbers will stay the same. It's more, can you target when you're blitzing, and maybe just if it gets cranked up just a little bit, kind of like Shane was sort of alluding to, it doesn't need to be this, you don't need Gus to turn into Wink Martindale. You maybe just a little bit more situationally sending these pressures and getting Kenny back hopefully would help with that as well.
What are you guys thinking on the offensive side with JT not being in there, Anthony not being in there? What they mean to this offense when they're both in the game and the pressure that they could put on a defense as opposed to just Anthony in the game, Trey Sermon behind him, or vice versa, Joe Flacco with Jonathan Taylor behind him. Is this offense at its highest peak only with those two guys in the offenses? I guess what I'm trying to, if he's behind him, we're not going to get any better than that the way that this offense is set up.
Well, I think you have to be able to find a solution, even if you're not going to have Anthony and JT out there. Mm-hmm. Like you need to be able to find something. Obviously, that is your best offense, is with Anthony and JT out there, because what they are able to do in the run game, generating explosives on the ground and through the air, those two guys are the engine of this Colts offense. But Larra, if they're not out there, which, it's tough to count on guys to play 17 games all the time. You need to find a solution in terms of just keeping the run game going. Tyler Goodson ran the ball.
He ran
pretty
the ball
well on
really well.
Sunday, by
but
the way.
you, as a team, only had 99 yards rushing, and 22 of those were from Joe Flacco. So that's just, something to keep in mind. Yes. I mean,
he hit 18 miles an hour on that run,
yeah,
by the
but
way.
they can
like
scoot.
18.76. Like,
okay, so real quick, this is a quick aside. How fast can you go on a treadmill?
I can crank it up to 15 and hold it for a while. Like, I can't do 15 for a mile, but I can hold it for probably a minute. Like, so I don't know. The treadmills I'm on kind of top out there around 15.
Right.
Not that I'm breaking the belt or anything, but 18 is hauling.
So you hop on the curve treadmill.
Curve
just based
crazy.
on your speed. Like, hitting 18 miles an hour.
Could you?
No.
In pads, in
pads
cleats?
with a helmet?
Yeah.
No.
At 39, too.
At
39.
Yeah.
I'm 35. There's no shot.
That was his longest rush since the 2017 season. I actually joked with Shane yesterday, and I asked if Joe Flacco's aging in reverse on us. I think he is.
A little bit, yeah.
I think so. And
Benny Button.
Yeah, right? He called him, too. We've heard Joe referred to as Joe Cool. Shane also called him Jersey Joe, which I had not heard Jersey Joe. Somehow I'd missed that one. But, I think he's Joey Jets.
Joey Jets.
He's 18.76.
It's Joey Jets at 39.
But, yeah, here, I do think that you will get better rushing performances as you move forward. Man, just what you're going to get from that Jacksonville front. Like, they just tend to feast. And this offensive line played well. That's the other thing, is the run game, and maybe some of your struggles there against Jacksonville should not be on your offensive line. But you've got to find ways in situations that maybe you don't have one or the other. I don't think there are going to knock on anything. I don't think there are going to be a lot of situations that you don't have 5 and 28. I think that if you have one or the other, then that allows you to do a lot more. This was kind of the greatest test of not having those big run threat weapons. I would have loved to have just seen what this offense was like with Flacco and with JT out there, at least in support as your primary run threat. It's going to be interesting, too, because that high ankle sprain is something that does tend to linger. It's something you do not want to rush back from. So I do think that if Jonathan misses another week, but Anthony returns, I think you're going to see some strides and some development within that run game from what you saw.
Can we do the gut check? What you guys are thinking? Just gut. That's all I'm saying. We are not talking about, this has nothing to do with who's going to practice or anything, but you guys cover this team. Gut check time. Who comes back this week?
My gut is that Anthony would be back before
You're
JT.
saying of all the guys.
Of all the guys,
all the
to
guys.
get this team back to where we are.
I would say Ryan Kelly, Kwity Paye, Kenny Moore, and Anthony Richardson. I think that Jonathan is probably the one that I think takes a little bit longer because of the ankle and just the fact that you don't want to rush him back, play a game, aggravate it, miss more games. Like, it's something that, okay, you miss weeks 5 and 6 and you're good to go for the rest of the season because JT has had some ankle issues in the past. Obviously, this is one where I don't think you want to play around.
Yeah,
with.
You got to make sure that he's back to 100% or as close to it as possible before you get him back out there, because this stretch right now of games where the Colts have a struggling Titans team, a struggling Dolphins team, you can't assume you're going to win these games. The Jaguars were struggling. Colts lost that game. But I'm looking at week 8 on, and you've got like the some of the best teams in the NFL. At Houston, at Minnesota, home to Buffalo, at the New York Jets, who just fired Robert Saleh right before we started
How about that?
potting here.
Good poll, yeah.
And then you got the Detroit Lions coming in.
Another
That
buzzsaw,
stretch right there, like, you got to be tuned up. You got to be ready to go for that stretch because that could be a season-defining stretch for this football team.
Health is everything. Coming up, Larra had a chance to catch up with CBS sideline reporter. We're going to give you that right there. Aditi Kinkhabwala is going to be her third straight Colts game that she's going to be doing network coverage from. But, Larra, I wanted to pinpoint some players individually, maybe give some Pro Bowl nods to. I know it's early in the year, but players that are playing well above and beyond. If I might start a little bit, Q has been all over. It's just a regular Quentin Nelson sort of year. Everyone's talking about him. Everyone's showing his highlights and everything. You got to start there with the guy that is, putting it up and laying it down week in and week out. Big Q at number 56.
Yeah, I think that's an easy one for me. And I think that we so frequently take his play for granted because we have seen it for so long with such consistency. He sets that standard, right? And yeah, I think that's kind of an easy, of any of them, that's the one you don't have to make the argument for. Like, I think the argument is, who else other than this guy are you trying to put in there would be my argument to that. So I think he's kind of a runaway at this point with the level at which he's been playing and the fact he's just now regarded as one of the best in the NFL.
Who's got the highest Pro Football Focus offense grade among AFC tackles?
Bernard
Ryman.
Wow.
Playing well, huh?
Let's start talking about that one, huh?
Okay.
I love that.
Bernie's playing great. He's playing really good football just across the board. And I kind of just casually looked at this. I was like, all right, among like starting tackles, where does he rank? And okay, Trent Williams, NFC. Christian Darrisaw, NFC. Charles Cross, NFC. Tristan Wirfs, you guessed it, NFC. Paris Johnson, NFC. Brian O'Neill, NFC. Then there's Bernie in there. And Bernie, he's having a really good year. Something that Tony Sperano Jr., I had a conversation with him during training camp about Ryman, that he said is he's so scheme versatile that you can run different concepts in your run game because of Bernard Ryman at left tackle. You can run some gap stuff, you can run some zone stuff, you can get him on the move, you can do so many different things because he's so athletic, and he's not just pigeonholed into like, well, he's a left tackle and he's got to play in this scheme or that scheme. That allows the Colts, I think, a lot more flexibility in what they're able to do week to week to game plan for certain opponents. He's fantastic. A guy who absolutely, I think, could be in a Pro Bowl conversation.
We're not talking about him. That's how you know. He's fantastic because we're just not saying anything.
Yeah,
hey, another great game from Ryman.
That's unfortunate for usually what goes along with the job of being an offensive lineman, right? Like you don't get talked about when you're good. Like that's what goes along with that territory so often.
The thing that sucks too, to go back to Fries, is he would have been my pick.
Yeah.
Like I think you could.
You and I had this conversation about contract year for him and all of that. Like the value placed upon him.
There would have been like a real world here where you have Quentin Nelson and Will Fries both in the Pro Bowl.
Wow.
The way that both those guys are playing.
Spud.
Yeah.
That would have been great. I had to stop for a minute when you said that Will Fries thing. I'm like, why did they call him Spud? I haven't heard. The Fries part.
Yeah.
Hey, it's early. Just bear with me on this one. Can I throw one out there? Nick Cross. Playing well, leading the league in tackles at one point until him and EJ were up there. A big interception.
Safety's a tough position in my mind.
It's a tough position to crack.
I think it's you look at the position group, and that's a tough one.
Having said that, like safety is always going to get it based on turnovers.
Yeah.
Tackles are not going to get you into the Pro Bowl. But Nick Cross is a pick. He's got a forced fumble. Keep making plays on the ball, and maybe we get to week 12 and he's got a real shot at it.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see. Who else you got? Pro Bowl possibilities early on in the year, guys.
Okay, I'm gonna say just brief mention. Zaire Franklin deserves to be in that conversation.
He should have been in it last year.
Exactly, has deserved to be in it. So Zaire obviously done. End of conversation. You need to make no argument. He's Zaire Franklin. He has done what he has done at that level with such consistency year on year. Yes, he should be in there, and I think by the end of the season he will. The other one, JJ, you and I have had some fun banter about young Alec Pierce.
Yes.
He has 13 catches.
13 catches.
And
he has the best average of receptions among the entire league.
Attaboy.
He is averaging 28.3 yards per reception with 3 touchdowns on the year. JJ, I am not going to steal your thunder because the stat that you served up to me on Sunday night says everything.
It's really telling to have multiple games where you have 100 or more yards on 3 or fewer receptions. I looked up this list. It's on Colts.com in my 5 Colts things. But over the last 25 years, Alec Pierce is the 8th player to have at least 3 games where he's had 100 or more yards on 3 or fewer receptions.
Wow.
On that list, Deshaun Jackson, Mike Wallace, Devery Henderson, Greg Jennings, Gabe Davis, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, A.J. Green. That is a who's who of your best downfield threats in the NFL.
I love that. That's great.
And Alec Pierce, this is legit here. Alec Pierce, by the way, at 28.3, he entered this week, I think at 24.3, and it went up. And
he did all of that in the fourth quarter.
He did all of it in like 5 minutes in the fourth quarter. He's at
the other thing is the 3 games that he's been above 100, right, on the stat that you just gave, all 3 different quarterbacks.
Gardner Minshew,
Anthony Richardson, Joe Flacco. So those 3 different quarterbacks that he's been on the receiving end of.
Alec Pierce is at 28.3 yards per catch. Jamison Williams is second in the NFL at 22.2. In the AFC alone, Alec Pierce is at 28.3. The next highest is Brian Thomas at 18.0.
Wait, 10
Well, that
yards.
really went up last week, too.
Yeah, it sure did. The competition that he's going to run into as the season goes on, like Nico Collins and Jamar Chase, I know Collins is hurt, but those 2 guys are like, you can almost lock him into the Pro Bowl right now unless Collins is out for a while with the hamstring injury. You're looking at Brian Thomas Jr. is having a really good year. He is a legit number 1 wide receiver, it looks like, for the Jaguars. Stephon Diggs is still in this conversation in terms of yards. He's 5th. Alec Pierce is 4th in yards, by the way, in the AFC. So, even though he has 13 catches, he's right up there. But you're looking at Diggs, George Pickens, Garrett Wilson, Tyreek Hill. You're going to have some of these guys get into this conversation, but it could be that there's a world here. I mean, especially if Devontae Adams doesn't play or he gets traded to the NFC. There's a world here where we get to December and it's like, Alec Pierce is top 5 in yards and maybe he's top 40 in receptions, but he's got to be in that conversation.
And we're really getting into some gritty stats here. But when you think about not even his touchdowns have been awesome, right? But the play where he tips it to himself, unbelievable. Well, you think about too, and I joked about this on the radio broadcast, hey, that's very much like a volleyball type of play. His mom, an outstanding volleyball player, all of that, they share that in their background. His success on contested catches, think about this. Alec Pierce has the highest touch point in the league when you take his 6'3" height plus a 41" vertical.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he's got some hops. He could probably drive. He's the guy that grabs the dime off the top of the backboard. Not only can he slam it, you know what I mean? That sort of hops. Yeah.
There you go.
That's it.
I like that.
And that is volleyball. That's a good pull right there.
Thanks.
Let me throw one other name because we do have Aditi Kinkhabwala coming up with Larra Overton. One more name, Rigoberto.
Hey.
Oh, good call.
Rigoberto, right? I mean, at
put
the
him absolutely in that conversation.
top 3 in the AFC when it comes like that, and positionally speaking, he's been spot on right there. So that's another guy.
Right, I'm going to just pull up the punting average here. So Rigo is 13th in net punting average. That went way down with the Devin Duvernay return against Jacksonville. But he has 14 punts inside the 20. That's tied for the best in the NFL.
Nice, okay.
So, that's pretty good. He's when the ball leaves his foot, good things are generally happening except for that one play against Jacksonville.
Absolutely. All right.
And I don't know if that was, on Rigo.
You want information on the Colts, obviously Colts.com, but follow these 2 on the Twitter X, at Larra Overton, at JJ Stankevitz. Time now. Larra had a chance to sit down for the 3rd week in a row. She will be doing the sidelines for the Colts games on CBS. This is Aditi Kinkhabwala talking about this Colts team that she knows pretty darn well.
A pleasure to be joined by the woman I have shared now many sidelines with and excited to share it yet again this Sunday, Aditi Kinkhabwala with CBS. Okay, I know how crazy this stretch is for the Colts because they're playing 4 out of 5 games on the road. They have these back-to-back division games as you go into Nashville. What's the schedule for you like over the course of the week? Because every week is essentially a road week for you. Every single week you're traveling.
Oh, yes. It is. But you know what? It makes the time before you get on the road a little bit easier if you have some familiarity with the team. Now, I don't know. I mean, Colts fans may be thinking, why are we getting the same CBS crew 3 weeks in a row? I don't know. Hopefully they love our broadcast. I can't speak to that. But it does at least make Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday a little less onerous because you're not studying a team completely brand new. You're just sort of building off of what you've seen and you feel a little more comfortable. But in general, we fly based on where we're going on a Thursday night or a Friday morning. For me, where were we 2 weeks ago? We came to Indianapolis. I had to fly on Thursday night because there's not a direct flight from Pittsburgh to Indy Friday morning. And
That's
then
crazy,
last week
by the
we
way.
were in Jacksonville. Yeah, I mean, crazy. And it's a 6-hour drive, which is a little too long. And then last week, Jacksonville, I again had to fly on a Thursday night because there's not a direct flight. And then this week, Nashville, I will again fly on Thursday night because the Friday morning flight is like at 6 a.m. and that's a little too early. So fly in Thursday night, Friday morning, we go to the team's facility, the home team's facility. 2 weeks ago, that was in Indy. And then last week was in Jacksonville. This week will be with the Titans. Go to their home facility, watch practice, get a sense of the team, a feel for the home team. Then we have our production meetings, which are with any variety of coordinators, head coach, players. And then Friday night, we usually enjoy the city that we're in, get a good meal, hang out. Saturday is when we meet with the visiting team, which this week will again be the Colts. And we have our production meeting where we kind of sort through what the things we've learned are, what we feel our biggest stories are, what we'd like to build off of, what we're paying attention to. We go through our video elements, our graphics, kind of try to prepare for any and all eventuality, which was key 2 weeks ago when we were expecting Anthony Richardson and Joe Flacco all of a sudden stepped in. Joe told us that his wife was at the game and she actually went to the concession stand when he went in to buy the kids sodas. And when she came back, she looked at, I guess, their oldest son and was like, is this a trick play? Why is dad in the game? So anyway, yeah, I know. But great for us that at least, I mean, I've known Joe Flacco for 15 years now. I covered him when he was in Baltimore. So that works out really well for us. But then last week it was funny because Spiro, our play-by-play guy, was asking Shane Steichen, okay, just in case, what can you tell us about Sam Ellinger?
Oh, yeah, you have to.
At least like something because you never know. Yeah. And then in the week, so then I come home late on Sunday night if it's not a West Coast game. Monday, quite frankly, is just a total catch-up day. I have 2 kids where putting the house back in order, doing laundry, getting all caught up and all of that stuff, and start reading about the teams. And Tuesday, we have our first crew meeting where we kind of go through our early storylines for both teams, sort out who we want to talk to, who I want to talk to separately, what we're looking for, what we're researching, what we're preparing for before we actually get to Nashville.
I want to get to that.
Wasn't that?
No, that's great. I want to get back to that really quickly. But the question I want to circle back to is when you're in Indy and you guys get time to enjoy the city on like a Friday, where are you going? Where are some of your favorite spots? Because you've been here for the combine too. You've had plenty of time.
I can't even remember where we went to go eat in Indy. It was really good. It was a seafood place. We had to take an Uber. It was like on this really cool road that had a lot of restaurants. It was like a cobblestone road.
Oh.
I could look it up. I can figure it out.
Were you up in Carmel? Did you go all the way up to Carmel for dinner?
No, I don't think
Monterey.
it was that far.
Okay. Or were you on Mass Ave?
Where did we? Can you edit this? That it takes me that long. This is like real time.
We'll clean it up.
Where did we go for dinner in Indy? I'll find out. And then afterwards, so Spiro and Arch, my play-by-play guy, Spiro Ditas, my analyst, Adam Archuleta, and my producer, Jason Ross, all are major cigar guys. So Friday nights after dinner, and we go with our assistant director, our BAs, our director, everybody goes to dinner. But then afterwards, we break off, the 4 of us, and go to a cigar bar. So in Indy, we went to Nikki Blaine's and kind of just hang out. So
and I think that's so important because we always talk about the team chemistry within a roster within a locker room, but it's really important within a broadcast as well. And your report.
Wait, hold on. Salt on Mass. We went to Salt on
Salt.
Mass in Indy.
Yes. Yeah. I was thinking Mass Ave. So perfect. Yes. Salt's amazing. Quick,
Yeah, and the
quick
chemistry
response.
well, exactly. See, that's my crew. This is our crew group chat. So at least you can count on each other. That's the magic, though, and you know this because you do it as well. When you have good chemistry with your booth partners, with your producer, then that's when everything works well, right? When you know. When I know what Arch is passionate about, then that informs my reporting. When they trust me enough to tell them I'm seeing something on the sideline that's significant, it's these are all things that play in. And a lot of that time, quite frankly, is the time that we spend, or a lot of that trust is built off the field or off the outside of the booth, or however you want to phrase it. And those Friday night sessions is when we talk about anything and everything, our kids, our lives, where we live, home construction, health, whatever there is. So
You run the gamut of topics.
yes,
I know.
exactly.
And your relationship with Joe, the many seasons of which you have covered him, was very well illustrated in that post-game interview. You had some fun with him. He got the win against the Steelers. You joked around with him about Anthony thinking that he's cool. And Joe had this incredible response that we have all seen. But what are you seeing about Joe in Indy that really makes all of this work? Because I joked with Shane Steichen, it was a very vintage Joe Flacco-like performance last week against Jacksonville. Unfortunately, didn't quite get the comeback secured, but gave you every chance.
Yep. I mean, come on. He came back from a 2-touchdown hole with 5 minutes to go, brought them back even. If the defense had been able to hold the Jaguars, who knows what happens? You go into overtime. And I've seen Joe do this. I mean, 2 years ago, he was with the Jets. He was in Cleveland week 2. They were down 13 with like 3 minutes to go, and he brought the Jets back, and they won that game. You know what? And I said this, I actually tweeted this yesterday. We said it in our game on Sunday, and I tweeted it yesterday. It blows my mind that the only team that called Joe Flacco to come be their backup was the Colts. Like that, I don't get that. He had a tremendous run at the end of the season with Cleveland last year. Joe is a great teammate. He has seen anything and everything that there is to see. He is absolutely willing to help any young guy, but he's not overbearing in any way. We asked him this week too, have you talked to Anthony Richardson at all about protecting his body and the fine line? And he's like, you know what? I don't want to push. Like, that's a little too fresh right now. He knows I'm here. When he wants to have that conversation, we can. And that's the magic of Joe, right? Like, Joe's a dad. He's got 5 kids. He knows how to talk to people. He knows when is the right time to step in, when not to. He's got great experience. He's a great teammate. And he's so level. There's a reason he was called Joe Cool his whole career. There's also right now this really fun piece to him. And that's that he really is enjoying the moment. And he talked about this a lot in Cleveland last year, that he's recognizing, he's not thinking about hanging it up. He even told us he wants to play as long as he possibly can. But at this point in your career, you don't know how many chances you're going to get. You don't know how many more starts you'll ever have. So when you have them, you enjoy them. You don't know how many times you'll be out there with the game on the line and the ball in your hands. So you soak it in. And I'll tell you, 2 weeks ago, we had Andy Dalton, and he was getting a start with the Panthers. And he said that early in his career, he was constantly thinking about what's next. Okay, what does this start mean for the next week? What does this start mean for the playoffs? What does this start mean for my contract? What does this start mean for next season? And now you have no idea what tomorrow is. So you just enjoy today that much more. And I think that that's what we're seeing with Joe. And it's like in that post game, and it really is true. I do need everybody to know. I did actually say to Anthony Richardson in the meeting, so now that you've actually met Joe Flacco, is he any different than you thought from afar? And Anthony Richardson said, he's actually way cooler than I thought he was. So when I said that to Joe, I didn't make it up. Like, Anthony really did say that. And and that's Joe. Like, you could read the moment right there. I mean, I started the interview in the most ridiculous way. I think I said, Joe Flacco, do you ever age?
No,
So-
I asked. I mean, we saw him scramble for 20 plus yards. He hit a top speed of
Oh, I know.
18.76 miles per hour last week. So I joked with Shane. I said, "Are we experiencing Joe Flacco aging in reverse?" Like we're all thinking the exact same thing. And I think that Anthony, that reaction you got from him, the response you got from him, is so genuine because he even said when Joe came in that he was like, man, like it's Joe Flacco, man. Like I was in elementary school. This guy was winning Super Bowls. I'm riding the bus and he's taking Baltimore to a championship. Like that's Anthony is very, and I don't know that a ton of people have gotten to see that side of Anthony yet, but he is just very genuine and authentic and candid, in his responses and in his personality.
Yeah.
Like he was a little starstruck by Joe Flacco, which I think is just really, really cool. And that dynamic.
But that again, that's like the roller coaster of emotions that Joe takes you through. Like on the one hand, I feel young again because it takes me back 10 years when I was covering the AFC North and Joe was doing this in Baltimore.
Yeah.
But then he sits here and he tells us that Anthony Richardson's mom is only 8 days older than him. And it's like, oh my God. So Anthony Richardson could be my kid? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
I know. You have a 39-year-old quarterback and a 22-year-old quarterback, and then Sam Ellinger is like mid-20s right in the middle, right? You talked about Tuesday is like the big, it's your prep day where you're diving in, you're looking at storylines, thinking about who you're going to talk to. Now that you have had 2 straight weeks of the Colts, you've covered a win, you've covered a loss. Now this is another division game. What are the storylines that you're really honing in on for this Colts team going into Nashville?
Well, the news obviously is the biggest piece. Are we seeing Anthony Richardson come back or do we have another game with Joe Flacco? So that's obviously, in either way, that's significant. And what I mean by that is that even if it's Joe Flacco and Anthony isn't ready, and I hate this idea of tagging anybody as injury prone. I don't like that. I think it's unfair. Every injury happens in and of itself. But at the same time, it is a fact that Anthony Richardson has started 8 games and only completed 4 of them in his entire NFL career. So what does that mean? Shane Steichen has been pretty unapologetic in saying we're not going to take away the best things that he does. But there's, it's funny because Arch and I were talking about this in the car actually on the way to practice last week. Anthony Richardson hasn't played a lot of high-level football. So when you think about it, of course he played in middle school and in high school, but he was so better than anybody else on the field. It's not like he was taking hits. It's not like he had to learn how to slide or fall or when to throw the ball away to live to see another down because the guy was better than anybody. And then by the time he got to college where athletes are better, he still only played a handful of games. What was it? 13? He played 13 games in college?
That's right.
So that's not a huge sample size either. So now here he is in the NFL and it's only 8 games. So it's not, I think the older you get, the more you learn. What can my body take? What's the situation where I fight for that extra yard or I don't? This is where like the RPO says do this, but you know what? I see something blowing up, do something else. That all comes with time and experience. And Anthony just doesn't have much of that yet. So my point in saying all of this is that I think to do the Colts fans a service, whether Anthony plays or not, that's still a conversation. That's still a storyline in some way, because this is the future of your franchise. This is the guy that Michael Pittman openly told me thinks is going to play quarterback unlike anybody else has played the quarterback position. This is how much faith this organization has in who Anthony Richardson will be one day. So that's certainly one. And then 2, like the defense. Come on, what is going on with the defense? And Gus Bradley said that what happened in Green Bay was embarrassing. It was a gut check, but in some ways it brought the group together and they were significantly better for a period of time after that. And again, I got that there's so many injuries up front, on the back end. I understand that. But that's the National Football League right now.
Give me a team that doesn't have injuries right now.
Exactly. And so much of what players keep telling you is that, the difference between, first team and second team isn't that large unless you're talking about the defensive player of the year. But in general, these guys are on the 53-man roster for a reason. And what's separating first team from second team or older guy from younger guy is often opportunity. So when you get your opportunity, you need to step in. And when you got a guy like Kenny Moore, a guy like Julian Blackman that are doing everything to teach and bring along younger guys, it's too easy of an excuse to say, okay, well, they're injured on defense. There's something else at play here. And that obviously is, something you need to watch for. And you're facing a Titans team that's clearly struggling. And we also don't know, is it going to be Will Levis or Mason Rudolph?
Speaking of quarterback questions, they've got him on that side as well. It's interesting. Talk to Shane about his familiarity with the Titans defensive coordinator. They shared time in Philadelphia. So that's something to watch for in all of this. And talking about, the quarterback conversation, I remember Anthony saying it was really eye-opening. The game he played at Houston last year when he got knocked out, he eased up going into the end zone. He somewhat, didn't respect enough. Those aren't his words, but,
Right.
how hard the safety was going to be coming in. Because again, to your point, not something that he had experienced a ton of. And he did say that was eye-opening, and he realizes how much you have to respect the other guys. He, didn't have a clear path to the end zone in that. And that was something he learned a lot from.
Well, they're much faster. Come on,
everything.
that safety is flying at you
Yes.
much faster and hitting much harder than anybody you've ever faced in your life. So again, it's those cumulative hits. Did you see that that mic'd up where CJ Stroud at the end of the game against the Bears was trying to pull Caleb Williams, and he was like, hey, don't take those hits. Don't take those hits. You're going to be great, but you've got to watch your body. I'm paraphrasing here, but it's essentially CJ's been through it, and he's trying to.
And he's only a second-year guy. But he was in those shoes of Caleb Williams just 1 year ago. He has walked that path. I want to stay with the quarterback conversation just a little bit, because you talked about tagging someone as injury prone. Is it somewhat that Colts fans just have so much fear because of the Andrew Luck PTSD that maybe this Colts fan base, this audience is maybe a little more quick to have a heightened level of concern than maybe another organization, or if Anthony ran a different offense? Do we have to a little bit isolate Anthony from any of those things in the past, and you have to say, this is a new era, this is a new quarterback, this is a new offensive system, a new head coach, and you have to leave all of that behind?
I mean, of course, but we're talking about fans here, and ration, logic, reason. In my life, I have PTSD from certain places that I've been, and rationally, logically, we recognize, as fans are recognizing, this is different. This is not the same person. Anthony Richardson is a really, really large man. He is a lot bigger than Andrew Luck was. It's a different style. It's a different game today.
It's a different skill set. Even though Andrew had mobility,
everything.
This is unlike anyone else.
But of course, when you have fear like that, when you have had your heart broken as a fan, you obviously have some nerves about that. But again, the Colts aren't in any way. I'm not getting a sense. You're much better at this. You would know. You are in that building every single day. I don't get the sense that the Colts have lost any sort of patience or have any sort of frustration. My feeling is that the Colts are looking at these as isolated pieces of bad luck. Mm-hmm. And we, on the outside, it's easy to say, oh, well, they all happened on runs. Well, I'm sorry, but part of what makes Anthony Richardson so dynamic is his ability to actually move. You're not going to take that away from him.
And in 2024, what quarterback isn't a run threat? You have very few pure pocket passers anymore. Those guys are aging out of the league at this point. We have all evolved.
Right. And so, but again, it's just being smarter. It's just getting more experience and learning all those things that we talk about. So I don't know. What's your gut say? Today is Tuesday. You think Anthony's playing Sunday?
You know what? That was a part of a conversation that we had. I do think that he made significant strides last week. I think barring any sort of setback, I would expect him to have a very strong chance to start on Sunday. I have a little less optimism with Jonathan Taylor just because high ankle sprains are so very tricky and something that you don't want to roll the dice on. But Wednesday will be very indicative. And that goes for both teams, with what we're going to see in
And
Nashville.
that's what Brian Callahan, the Titans coach, said about Will Levis, that, on Monday he was hopeful that on Wednesday Levis would go. But I guess that's what we'll see, or we're waiting to see. Although here's a crazy fact. If it's Mason Rudolph versus Joe Flacco, those are two backups who PS started in the playoffs last year. Mason started a game for the Steelers in the playoffs, and Joe started a game for the Browns in the playoffs.
And two guys who
playoff experienced quarterbacks.
Wow, that's a deep dive, but that's the stuff that you get when you're diving into all of these storylines and having all these conversations. All right, who are you looking most forward to talking to when you make your requests, I should say, on Friday or Saturday when you're talking to the Colts?
Well, I am hopeful that Shane Steichen will show us more of that world famous personality. Thanks to you. I was introduced to his wife, and we were on the plane together actually to Atlanta from Jacksonville. We both had to go to Atlanta, and we were joking about that, where she was saying that people always talk about him, her husband, being so sort of like level, doesn't say much, doesn't really.
The phrase is all ball.
Who are they talking about? Yeah. So it's always, when you have someone that is pretty careful, pretty contained, you're always hoping that you can finally get a little something. But I'm not holding high hopes for that. I don't, truthfully, we'll have to talk. When it's the third week in a row that you're seeing someone, you obviously want to get new voices in there. You have to talk to the quarterback, whoever it is, whether it's Anthony or Joe. But I don't know who's someone, I got to talk to Michael Pittman. I'm excited to talk to Josh Downs, actually. I would bet that if we as a group don't talk to Josh Downs, I'll ask to talk to Josh Downs. I chatted with Trey Sermon last week. I thought that he was fun. Zaire is the best, always. We talked to him week 1. I don't know if we'll go back to him. We talked to Julian Blackman last week. He was great. I talked to Kenny Moore myself 2 weeks ago. He was really good. It feels like it's a good locker room.
It's a great locker room.
You would know better than me, but it just feels like we haven't had, even going back to last year, I haven't had a dud of a conversation.
Yeah.
I really haven't. And I feel as if the players that we've spoken to definitely recognize that we have a job to do and are trying to be helpful. Sometimes you talk to players who don't want to be helpful. And being helpful is not being outrageous. It's not necessarily giving, a crazy soundbite. It's just, okay, these are people that are charged with telling the story of our team in this broadcast. So how can I offer information to inform them more, give them more background, educate them on who we really are? And, it's funny, I work with some college athletes, and I always say that when you talk to the media, it's your chance to control your narrative. And so I feel as if the Colts are pretty smart. At least the players that I've talked to are pretty smart, that it actually behooves them to tell us their truth as they see it.
Mm-hmm. It's great to hear you say that, because I do feel like we are spoiled, but I only get to spend the majority of my time with this locker room. And it's not only, I think, a credit to Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen and how much they prioritize character and how they evaluate guys coming in. I also have to give a ton of credit, because they don't get enough of it, to our PR staff and our team for how they prepare players and what they do to, tell them, hey, this is who you're going to be talked to. Aditi's great. She's on the CBS group. They'll always try to make them, to put them in a situation that they're comfortable coming in as well. And I think that that's something too that helps our organization and helps our players immensely.
Yes. And you do have an outstanding PR staff. And I'm not just saying that because I have to work with them again. They really are. You can tell when a team is not only actively helpful to the media, but really trying to help their players. And it's, as you're saying, you are preparing your players in the best way that you can.
Yeah, absolutely. If you get a chance, grab Alec Pierce. I talked to him for our TV show this week. Alec is really fun. I'll shoot you some things on him. And so
He had a big game. He had some big catches.
Huge. And then and Quentin, when you get Quentin Nelson in the right situation, he can be as insightful and authentic as anybody.
All right. Good to know. Thank you for the tips. I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, of course. Look
what about defense? You got a defensive guy for me?
Okay.
Who's actually playing?
Grover Stewart.
Oh,
Grover
well.
and not that he's going to give you a lot of information, but just the palpable joy of that man just makes everything in this world better.
Awesome.
Latu, if you haven't had the chance yet.
I did. I met him at the combine. And I wrote a story about him, in fact.
Yes, there you go.
What a wonderful young man.
Wonderful. And it is, this whole thing is coming at him fast and furious. And, I asked him a couple weeks ago, what keeps you grounded? And he said, just being here, being around the guys. This is the only place I want to be. I want to be in the building. Like, he barely goes home because this is where he feels like this is home, like being in the facility, being around the guys. And he, is doing everything possible to contribute to this defense. I think he's taken a lot on, but this guy gives golden retriever energy like crazy.
He's another story, too, of perspective. I mean, this is a young man who football was taken away from because of that neck injury. He was told that he was not medically cleared, that he wasn't going to play. He was training to be a firefighter. He told me at the time it was because of the camaraderie that firefighters rely on each other the way that football players do. I mean, he thought his football career was over, and now here he is. Bonus, so obviously he brings all the energy to it.
And the vocational school the technical school that Anthony Richardson was going to in Gainesville for a period of time, he was going to be a firefighter. That was actually his path through. If he didn't go to the University of Florida and didn't pursue his football career, that's something that has been documented about his story too. So it's kind of wild. Yeah. EJ Speed is fantastic. He will give.
I talked to him last week too. Okay, I did talk to him. So I didn't get to use this, and I may use it in the game. So then I probably shouldn't tell you, just in case I use it in the game. All right, let's do another episode later in the year, and if I don't tell the story, then I'll tell it to you then.
We just have to get you back on another show.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh, Aditi, thank you so much for the time. Can't wait to see you in Nashville. Safe travels.
All right, so much fun always, anytime. Please call again.
Larra, great stuff with Aditi, and obviously when you brought up earlier in the show that interview that went around the world, the viral with Joe Flacco, I did love that because he just had, just sitting there with a crown. He's got sweat on his forehead. He just won a football game, and he's like, yeah, he doesn't think I'm cool at all. It was kind of funny. That
exactly.
I did love it. But anyway, thanks.
Humility.
Good catch up with her. Maybe she'll be on the fourth one against the Dolphins. Who knows if that's a CBS show rather. Now Tennessee awaits. Here's my first thing when I think of this. Well, two things, actually. The head coach saying to the starting quarterback, what in the flip are you doing? Brian Callahan to
Will Levis.
Okay, the reason I'm bringing that up is I just don't know other coaches where that would fit, is what I'm trying to say. What in the blank are you doing? Okay, that's one.
Sean Payton, Bo Nix in Denver.
That's what, that is.
I have a take about this. I don't care.
You don't?
I don't care. Like, whether you're thinking it or you're saying it, like, the harshest criticism is going to come on Monday during a film review, not on
the game.
Well, what are you doing?
Not
like that whatever. Like I also I just never read into like sideline spats. Like there's the whole thing of like people trying to read CeeDee Lamb's lips,
right,
and thinking he said that was a subpar throw to Dak Prescott. Who cares?
Yeah,
Who cares
I get the sense, I don't know Will Levis at all, but I would imagine, as a lot of quarterbacks are, like, you want to be coached hard. Like, you want a coach who's direct and tells you exactly what he's thinking. When you are trying to put your team in positions to win games, you need that type of reinforcement. So I think that maybe people see it as brutal honesty, but just straight up honesty, I think is a little bit necessary for young quarterbacks.
Especially with the young quarterback.
We're going to find out if Will Levis has it. Obviously, there was rumors that, Colts were thinking about taking him a few years back, and we watched him at the NFL draft sit there for a long time, and his mayonnaise endorsements and everything. But the biggest thing that is it's not the honky tonks when I think of Nashville going down there to play the Tennessee Titans. This is going to be a first time in forever that the Colts have not faced King Henry in a backfield
Oh.
for the Tennessee Titans, which is always
Sure.
the first thing we would lead off with for the last 8 years, it seems like.
Yeah.
Is how are we going to stop Derrick Henry
Yep.
right now? But
Rally to the ball,
now with
hamstring tackle.
Tony
yeah.
Pollard back there and stuff. But anyway, quick thoughts on the city, or not. We'll talk about the city of Nashville a little bit because I want to find out what you two are going to get into. but B, what goes on with this Tennessee Titans, the way they're fitting right now. Rand Carthon, obviously a lot of big offseason moves, bringing in some big names and whatnot. New coach included, the quarterback. What do we think
I
of this
think
team?
this is very much a coaching chess match because I talked with Shane Steichen on Monday about his familiarity with the Tennessee new defensive coordinator. They have a rapport going back to their days in
Denard Wilson,
Philadelphia.
yeah.
So I'm interested to see that schematic chess match between those two. And I do think that like that first quarter is probably gonna be a little bit of a feeling out period on exactly what they're going to try to bring. And they probably have some questions too, because what I like is that they're preparing for, well, it could be Anthony Richardson. It could be Joe Flacco. It could be Anthony with JT. It could be Anthony without JT. It could be Flacco with JT. Like so although the injuries have not been kind to the Colts, in this situation, it is a little bit interesting that the defense is going to have to account for a lot of different variables.
Yeah, this is a really good Titans defense. Like, they're playing really good football. And I know, like, they faced Caleb Williams in his NFL debut. They faced a Miami Dolphins offense that looks kind of broken. There's some context there. They're third in the NFL in yards per play. They're first in the NFL in yards allowed per game. They're first in the NFL in passing yards allowed per game. They're second in passing yards per play. They're 10th in rushing yards per play. They're second on third down. They're seventh in the red zone. They're only allowing 14 first downs per game.
Enough, JJ. You just rattled off about 28 things about
Yeah, because it's easy to see.
Tennessee
It's easy to see when you highlight them, and it's like, whoa, this is a really good defense.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't watched a ton of them, but whew, okay. Denard Wilson's got those guys tuned up and playing really good football right now.
gosh.
This is going to be a challenge for
Harold
the Colts to go down there.
Landry, I mean, Jeffrey Simmons. I mean, this is a little nerve-wracking when you think about this Tennessee defense. All right, can we switch the gears? Obviously, we want to get back to 3-3.
You need your first division win of the season.
Yeah, for God's
you
sake.
can't
That's
start off
what's big.
0-3 in the
Yeah.
division.
That's
Yeah.
what's big, is you do not want to let Houston run away with this thing early on.
Flacco, Richardson, don't know. Taylor, no Taylor. We're going to find that out. All that
really, really telling Wednesday.
Yeah.
You know?
Wednesday, that's going to come up. Colts.com has the latest. Again, follow these two, at Larra Overton, at JJ Stankevitz. Let's go to the city of Nashville very quickly. Some stuff to do down there when you're visiting. I'm just checking my notes. You can verify this. You won a line dancing competition down in Nashville a few years back. You know a thing or two about boot, scoot, and boogie, huh?
Country music's my least favorite genre of music, and it's not close. So that would be incorrect.
I got the wrong notes here. I'm sorry
Yeah.
about that.
Larra. I thought they were getting JJ to pull the goalposts out of the river there. That
Yeah, I'll do a little scuba diving. Bring my hacksaw.
Shout out to Vandy.
Just for charity, would you ride a mechanical bull?
For charity? Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. No, those I would never hop on one of those. What's going on to you?
Why would you never hop on a mechanical bull?
I've had neck surgery. I can't. do
Okay,
that.
that's a good
If
reason.
I was 24 or something, I'd be like,
Yeah.
"Come on, you son of a, let's go!"
Yeah.
But since then, I can't. Tootsie's.
Oh, it's been a while since I've been.
Been a while since Tootsie's on Broadway there?
But
Yeah?
I do. Yeah, Broadway. I kind of miss it from like 10 years ago or
Right.
something. Like the Broadway is much different than it used to be. It's a little infiltrated. It's become a little bit of a tourist trap. It's still a great time. I was actually raving to JJ that there's this like custom hat bar that is right down the street from where we're staying, and so I really want to go. I don't know if I'll necessarily splurge on one, but it just looks like where you can adorn it with the different things. You can get it stamped in. And
Could you get a Kentucky Derby hat there?
No, it's more of a
Okay.
cowboy hat style,
Okay.
not a derby hat. But I love where your head's at
Yeah.
on that one.
Yeah.
I love Nashville though.
Yeah.
I actually
Fun.
really I kind of love Nissan Stadium too. Like just the whole vibe of it is cool. The location of it is really neat. Always have a good time going down there. Look forward to this trip. Plus weather looks outstanding, and I know that there are a ton of Colts fans that are going to make that trip.
Mm-hmm.
So look forward to seeing so many people down there. Yeah, we'll probably go watch some college football.
Yeah.
Some great games happening this weekend, and then who knows?
What about you? What about new pair of boots? Maybe.
Nah, I'm not a big Nashville guy because I'm just not a big country music guy.
Gotcha, okay.
I mean, it's a fun place to go, like no doubt. But I'll avoid Broadway at all costs. But probably go watch some college football. Maybe take a turn at Santa's Pub.
Santa's Pub.
Santa's Pub,
Yeah.
boy, that is, I used to work right down the street from there.
Did you really?
Yeah, right there in the
Santa's
heart
Pub
of
is
Music
tied.
City. Yeah,
It's right by the new soccer stadium there now.
right there.
Yeah.
That's great. You guys will be right in it. Please go to Santa's Pub. That's a great one. All right, listen.
Yeah, if you're going to Nashville and
go
you
to
want to
Santa's
find
Pub.
a spot that's off of Broadway, it's more of a local spot, Santa's Pub, but bring cash.
Bring cash.
Be prepared to sing a little karaoke.
Sure.
'Cause
It's been there for about 60,
there have
70
been
years.
some epic Bob Seger performances happening.
Willie Nelson used to go there. I know
Really?
that. That was
Oh.
back in the day.
Did he sing Bob Seger as well?
No, he sang Willie Nelson.
Yeah, okay.
Willie was at that point. But
Yeah.
guys, go get us a win down there. Let's go, get this thing back to even. Health is a huge factor for this team right here. Everything's going to be coming around slowly. They start stacking W's, and this is a great team for the Colts to be playing because we don't know who they are. Tennessee Titans don't even know who they are just yet, and a lot of teams are trying to figure that out. But I'm telling you, go down there, get this one, get back to 3-3. You want more information? Again, follow them on Twitter X at Larra Overton, at JJ Stankevitz, and of course, the latest and greatest. Wednesday's coming up. We're going to give you practice reports and who is healthy for this week. The Titans down in Tennessee. The Colts are going to be facing a good team in front of their home crowd. So a lot to be look forward to this week. Colts.com has the latest for Larra Overton and JJ Stankevitz. I'm Jeffrey Gorman. We'll talk to you next week.